Phil Smith reads Jean Shepherd. The first book, In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. Chapter 5, I Poke at an Old Wound. I sat staring sorrowfully into my flat beer. Flick, in his best bartender's barside manner developed over years of sympathizing with despondent drunks, said philosophically, "Well, chicks come and chicks go. They all want something from you." I did not answer. He went on, "Have you ever tried an Ovaltine Stinger? I'll whip one up for you if you'd like to try it." "No, Flick, I'll stick with beer this afternoon." I was now rapidly approaching one of my reflective moods. Flick, not only was I undone by Little Orphan Annie, but do you remember a girl named Junie Jo Pruitt? He stared for a moment out at the used car lot, thinking hard. "No, I don't believe I do." "Well, Flick, I do." Chapter 6, The Endless Streetcar Ride into the Night and the Tinfoil Noose. Mewling, puking babes. That's the way we all start. Damply clinging to someone's shoulder, burping weakly, clawing our way into life, all of us. Then gradually, surely, we begin to divide into two streams, all marching together up that long yellow brick road of life, but on opposite ends of the street. One crowd goes on to become the official people, peering out at us from television screens, magazine covers. They are forever appearing in newsreels, carrying attaché cases, surrounded by banks of microphones, while the world waits for their decisions and statements, and the rest of us go on to become just us. They are the prime ministers, the presidents, cabinet members, stars, dynamic molders of the universe, while we remain forever the onlookers, the applauders of their real lives. Forever down in the dark dungeons of our souls, we ask ourselves, how did they get away from me? When did I make that first misstep that took me forever to the wrong side of the street, to become eternally part of the accursed, anonymous audience? It seems like one minute we're all playing around back of the garage, kicking tin cans and yelling at girls, and the next instant you find yourself doomed to exist as an office boy in the mailroom of life, while another ex-mewling puking babe sends down dicta, says no comment to the press, and lives a real genuine life on the screen of the world. Countless sufferers at this hour are spending billions of dollars in endless man-hours lying on analysts' couches, trying to pinpoint the exact moment that they stepped off the track and into the bushes forever. It all hinges on one sinister reality that is rarely mentioned, no doubt due to its implacable, irreversible inevitability. These decisions cannot be changed, no matter how many brightly cheerful, buoyantly optimistic books on how to achieve a richer, fuller, more bountiful life, or 7 magic golden keys to instant dynamic success, or The Secret of How to Become a Billionaire we read, or how many classes are attended for instruction in handshaking, backslapping, grinning, and making after-dinner speeches. Joseph Stalin was not a Dale Carnegie graduate. He went all the way. It is an unpleasant truth that is swallowed, if at all, like a rancid, bitter pill. A star is a star. A numberless cipher is a numberless cipher. Even more eerie a fact is that the Great Divide is rarely a matter of talent or personality, or even luck. Adolf Hitler had a notoriously weak handshake. His smile was, if anything, a vapid mockery. But inevitably, his stars zoomed higher and higher. Cinema luminaries of the first order are rarely blessed with even the modicum of talent, and often their physical beauty leaves much to be desired. What is the difference between us and them? We and they, the big ones, and the great teeming rabble. There are about 4 times in a man's life, or a woman's too for that matter, when unexpectedly, from out of the darkness, the blazing carbon lamp, the cosmic searchlight of truth, shines full upon them. It is how we react to those moments that forever seals our fate. One crowd simply puts on its sunglasses, lights another cigar, and heads for the nearest plush French restaurant in the jazziest section of town, sits down and orders a drink and ignores the whole thing. While we, the doomed, caught in the brilliant glare of illumination, see ourselves inescapably for what we are, and from that day on skulk in the weeds, hoping no one else will spot us. Those moments happen when we are least able to fend them off. I caught the first one full in the face when I was 14. The 14th summer is a magic one for all kids. You have just slid out of the pupa stage, leaving your old baby skin behind, and have not yet become a grizzled, hardened, tax-paying beetle. At 14, you are made of cellophane. You curl easily and everyone can see through you. When I was 14, life was flowing through me in a deep, rich torrent of Castoria. How did I know that the first rocks were just ahead and I was about to have my keel ripped out on the reef? Sometimes you feel as though you are alone in a rented rowboat, bailing like mad in the darkness with a leaky bailing can. It is important to know that there are at least 2 billion other ciphers in the same boat, bailing with the same leaky can. They all think they are alone and are crossed with an evil star. They are right. I'm 14 years old in my sophomore year at high school. One day, Schwartz, my purported best friend, sidled up to me edgily outside of school while we were waiting on the steps to come in after lunch. He proceeded to outline his plan. Helen's old man won't let me take her out on a date Saturday night unless I get a date for her girlfriend. A double date. The old coot figures, I guess, that if there are 4 of us there won't be no monkey business. Huh? Well, how about it? You want to go on a blind date with this chick? I never seen her. Well, for years I had this principle. Absolutely no blind dates. I was a man of perception and taste, and life was short. But there is a time in your life when you have to stop taking and begin to give just a little. For the first time, the warmth of sweet human charity brought the roses to my cheeks. After all, Schwartz was my friend. It was little enough to do, have a blind date with some no doubt skinny, pimply girl for your best friend. I would do it for Schwartz. He would do as much for me. Okay, Schwartz. Then followed the usual ribald remarks, feckless boasting and dirty jokes about dates in general and girls in particular. It was decided that next Saturday we would go all the way. I had a morning paper route at the time, and my life savings stood at about $1.80. I was all set to blow it on one big night. I will never forget that particular Saturday as long as I live. The air was as soft as the finest of spun silk. The scent of lilacs hung heavy. The catalpa trees rustled in the early evening breeze from off the lake. The inner me itched in that nameless way, that indescribable way that only the 14-year-old male fully knows. All that afternoon I had carefully gone over my wardrobe to select the proper symphony of sartorial brilliance. That night I set out wearing my magnificent electric blue sport coat, whose shoulders were so wide that they hung out over my frame like vast drooping eaves, so wide I had difficulty going through an ordinary door head-on. The electric blue sport coat that draped voluminously almost to my knees, its wide lapels flapping soundlessly in the slightest breeze. My pleated gray flannel slacks began just below my breastbone and indeed chafed my armpits, high-belted, cascading down finally to grasp my ankles in a vice-like grip. My tie, indeed one of my most prized possessions, had been a gift from my Aunt Glen upon the state occasion of graduation from 8th grade. It was of a beautiful silky fabric, silvery, pearly colored, 4 inches wide at the fulcrum, and of such a length to endanger occasionally my zipper in moments of haste. Hand-painted upon it was a magnificent blood-red snail. I had spent fully 2 hours carefully arranging and rearranging my great mop of wavy hair, into which I had rubbed fully 1.5 pounds of greasy kid stuff. Helen and Schwartz waited on the corner under the streetlight at the streetcar stop near Junie Joe's home. Her name was Junie Joe Pruitt. I won't forget it quickly, although she has, no doubt, forgotten mine. I walked down the dark street alone, past houses set back off the street through the darkness, past privet hedges under elm trees, through air rich and ripe with promise. Her house stood back from the street even farther than the others. It sort of crouched in the darkness, looking out at me, kneeling, pregnant with girldom, a real girlfriend house. The first faint touch of nervousness filtered through the marrow of my skull bone as I knocked on the door of the screen-enclosed porch. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Through the murky screens I could see faint lights in the house itself. Still no answer. Then I found a small doorbell button buried in the sash. I pressed. From far off in the bowels of the house, I heard 2 chimes bong politely. It sure didn't sound like our doorbell. We had a real ripper that went off like a broken buzzsaw, more of a brrrr than a muffled bong. This was a rich people's doorbell. The door opened, and there stood a real, genuine, gold-plated father, pot-belly, underwear shirt, suspenders and all. "Well?" he asked. For one blinding moment of embarrassment, I just couldn't remember her name. After all, she was a blind date. I couldn't just say, "I'm here to pick up some girl." He turned back into the house and hollered, "Junie Joe, some kid's here." I countered. He led me into the living room. It was an itchy house, sticky stucco walls of a dull orange color, and all over the floor this oriental rug with the design crawling around, making loops and swirls. I sat on an overstuffed chair covered in stiff green mohair that scratched even through my slacks. Little twisty bridge lamps stood everywhere. I instantly began to sweat down the back of my clean white shirt. Like I said, it was a very itchy house. It had little lamps sticking out of the walls that looked like phony candles with phony glass orange flames. The rug started moaning to itself. I sat on the edge of the chair and tried to talk to this father. He was a Cub fan. We struggled underwater for what seemed like an hour and a half when suddenly I heard someone coming down the stairs. First the feet, then those legs, and there she was. She was magnificent, the greatest looking girl I ever saw in my life. I have hit the double jackpot, and on a blind date, great Scott! My senses actually reeled as I clutched the arm of that bilged green chair for support. Junie Joe Pruitt made Cleopatra look like a Girl Scout. 5 minutes later, we are sitting in the streetcar heading toward the bowling alley. I am sitting next to the most fantastic creation in the feminine department known to Western man. There are the four of us in that long yellow-lit streetcar. No one else was aboard, just us four. I, naturally being a trained gentleman, sat on the aisle to protect her from candy wrappers and cigar butts and such. Directly ahead of me, also on the aisle, sat Schwartz, his arm already flung affectionately in a death grip around Helen's neck as we boomed and rattled through the night. I casually flung my right foot up onto my left knee so that she could see my crepe-soled perforated wing-toed Scotch blookers with the two-tone laces. I started to work my famous charm on her. Casually, with my practiced, offhand, cynical, cutting, sardonic humor, I told her about how my old man had cracked the block in the Oldsmobile, how the White Sox were going to have a good year this year, how my kid brother wet his pants when he saw a snake, how I figured it was going to rain, what a great guy Schwartz was, what a good second baseman I was, how I figured I might go out for football. On and on I rolled like Old Man River, pausing significantly for her to pick up the conversation. Nothing. Nothing. Ahead of us, Schwartz and Helen were almost indistinguishable one from the other. They giggled, bit each other's ears, whispered, clasped hands, and in general made me itch even more. From time to time, Junie Jo would bend forward stiffly from the waist and say something I could never quite catch into Helen's right ear. I told her my great story of the time that Uncle Carl lost his false teeth down the air shaft. Still nothing. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that she had her coat collar turned up, hiding most of her face as she sat silently, looking forward past Helen Weathers into nothingness. I told her about this old lady on my paper route who chews tobacco and roller skates in the backyard every morning. I still couldn't get through to her. Casually, I inched my right arm up over the back of the seat behind her shoulders. The acid test. She leaned forward, avoiding my arm, and stayed that way. As nonchalantly as I could, I retrieved it, battling a giant cramp in my right shoulder blade. I sat in silence for a few seconds, sweating heavily as ahead Schwartz and Helen are going at it hot and heavy. It was then that I became aware of someone saying something to me. It was an empty car. There was no one else but us. I glanced around, and there it was. Above us, a line of car cards looked down on the empty streetcar. One was speaking directly to me alone. Do you offend? Do I offend? With no warning, from up near the front of the car where the motorman is steering, I see this thing coming down the aisle directly toward me. It's coming closer and closer. I can't escape it. It's this blinding, fantastic, brilliant, screaming blue light. I am spread-eagled in it. There's a pin sticking through my thorax. I see it all now. I am the blind date. Me! I'm the one they're being nice to. I'm suddenly getting fatter, more itchy. My new shoes are like bowling balls with laces, thick rubber crepe bowling balls. My great tie that Aunt Glenn gave me is 2 feet wide, hanging down to the floor like some crinkly tinfoil noose. My beautiful hand-painted snail is 7 feet high, sitting upon my shoulder burping. Great Scott! It is all clear to me in the searing white light of truth. My friend Schwartz. I can see him saying to Junie Jo, I got this crummy fat friend who never has a date. Let's give him a break. And I am the blind date. They are being nice to me. She is the one who is out on a blind date that didn't make it. In the seat ahead, the merriment rose to a crescendo. Helen tittered. Schwartz cackled. The marble statue next to me stared gloomily out into the darkness as our streetcar rattled on. The ride went on and on. I am the blind date! I didn't say much the rest of that night. There wasn't much to be said.